Welcome everyone to the Financial Advisors Workshop. Once again, we are in the process of meeting lots of great people in the industry and telling best practices and learning about different types of practices. And I'm Brian Kasal, I'm your host. We have a very interesting character with us today. His name is Shawn, and his last name is Tydlaska. So it's like Tid and Alaska, but you drop the A, like Tydlaska. Is that right, Shawn?
That's perfect. You got it.
Excellent. Now, Shawn is the founder of his firm, and I'll let you tell us all about your firm and the name of your firm and everything else, and tell us your background. So, Shawn, if we could have you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today. So, why don't we start off?
Sure. So I'm the founder of Ballast Point Financial Planning. I'm based here in the Bay Area, just south of San Francisco. We have offices in Florida, South Carolina, and Maryland. Most of our clients are here in California. I'd say maybe like 80% in the Bay Area. We work with young professionals, a lot of families. I'm 40 years old. Our average client's about 40. People starting families, having kids, buying homes, saving for college. We work with about 140 families. On my team, there's 6 of us. There's 4 client-facing advisors. We do a lot of tax planning for our clients. We do a lot of proactive tax planning. We also prepare tax returns for our clients, and we have 3 enrolled agents on our staff.
Nice. Well, good. So how did you started in the Bay Area? How did you get to these other markets?
So as we were growing, I was looking to add team members. And so I posted my jobs and hired the best candidates that applied. And that's where they live. One of our team members was living in Monterey, and then she moved to Maryland with her husband, who was in the military, and got reassigned over to Maryland. So it's kind of just been adding offices where my team is.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay, so that's how it developed. So, Shawn, you didn't start out, though, right away as a financial planner. So tell us how you started. I believe it was the Capital Group. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I went to UCLA for undergrad, and I was looking to get into, I always had an interest in personal finance and wanted to get into the industry. But the jobs that were available, this is in 2004, this was like Ameriprise, AXA, Northwestern Mutual, Edward Jones, and it was all, there's so many interviews where it was like, write down all the people that you know on a piece of paper, bring it to us for the next interview. Expectations were you to be a producer, and if you didn't, then you were out. And I didn't want to start my career with that type of pressure. So I was looking for a good, stable, steady job, and found the Capital Group, who's headquartered in LA. And I was doing kind of like fund accounting, corporate actions, keeping track of all of the shares that we owned. And if there was a merger or a stock split, our team would keep track of that for accounting purposes. Then my wife got into business school, and we moved to Boston, and I worked for GMO. A lot of people know Jeremy Grantham in the industry. He writes these quarterly letters. And then from there, we moved to San Diego, and that's actually where I grew up, in San Diego. My wife got a job in San Diego, and then that's where I officially started in the financial planning industry, working for some firms that worked with high net worth individuals.
Nice. Well, good. So you built the firm around the country, and then tell us about that experience with GMO. What did you learn from the old hawk, Jeremy? He had probably a lot to say. He certainly does.
Yeah, so reading those quarterly letters, they're really dense, and I learned a lot about like his thoughts on like the environment and global warming, and he's always like a perma bear. He always thinks there's going to be a recession. I learned about animal spirits, mean reversion. So like from the investment standpoint, I learned a lot just by observing him and their investment philosophies.
And he's been predicting negative returns for a while, and certainly last quarter he was right.
Yeah, he thinks at a whole different level.
He really does. Well, it's great experience though, and and you learn so many things about all these different people and the Capital Group, which is the largest fund family in America. Tell us about that experience.
So that was my first professional job. I really learned a lot about like how capital markets work with like rights issues and warrants and like private placements and stock dividends and cash dividends and just kind of all about how companies work. It was during that time when I was doing that work that I started studying to become a CFP. So I was like taking night classes to kind of learn about the industry. But yeah, so I think my experience at the Capital Group was about, kind of learning about stocks, bonds, and kind of the different kind of transactions that happen with companies throughout their life cycle. So that was good to learn about.
Fascinating. Well, and we talked earlier about how you developed into the industry, but you didn't start like at a brokerage firm like a Merrill Lynch or a Morgan Stanley. You were there for a little bit, but your main experience was really in these other places, wasn't it?
Yeah. So my very first exposure to financial planning was an internship that I had when I was in college, and I was working at Merrill Lynch. And half of the summer was just spent cold calling other financial advisors to try to get them to come to Merrill Lynch. And then the other half was helping one of the advisors there try to build his business. And it really wasn't it wasn't collaborative. Like, we weren't. I was told not to share what we were doing with other advisors for the fear that like they might take our clients or our marketing strategy. So it wasn't kind of the best. It wasn't like kind of what I imagined in terms of like helping people with their finances. So that's why I was like really trying to study for the CFP exam, make sure I knew what I was talking about, trying to find an entry point into the profession that wasn't just like sales based. So it probably took me 6 years before I actually got my first financial planning job once I graduated.
Okay. So you took some time to get it right. And one of the things that we talked about earlier in the pre-discussion was that a lot of folks do train in the industry and they do work for an Ameriprise or an LPL in the kind of quasi-independent space, or the full-blown brokerage firms, the Wells Fargo's and the former Edward Jones and A.G. Edwards, and mine was Payne Weber, and all the baggage scars that go along with that. But yet, as we discussed that, since you didn't have that experience, you did have some other experiences. So what were your experiences that really, kind of taught you some lessons about the industry a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, it was so hard to get into this industry and to find where you belong for me. And so my first full-time job was at a small broker dealer in Southern California. They primarily sold raw land to their clients and non-traded REITs and oil partnerships and all these kind of illiquid securities. And that job was in 2010 is when I started there. So they were kind of still working through like the Great Recession, and like some of these deals that they had sourced for their clients, there was like fraud involved, and the company ended up going bankrupt, and the broker dealer itself went going bankrupt. And that's just not how I had imagined financial planning to be.
Right.
And I'm like, what did I get myself into? And that really did scar me, and like I felt like kind of sleazy about calling myself a financial planner, because I feel like people had such a bad experience with like Bernie Madoff and like all
Right.
these bad actors. And I feel like our industry wore a dark hat so for a while. And so I'm trying to help move the profession forward one plan at a time, and help make our profession more respectable.
And that's exactly what you're doing. You talked to me earlier about your strategy with a client, and it's very different than like a big brokerage firm where it's based on AUM and other kind of measurements that they care about. So how do you manage a client at Ballast Point?
Yeah, so for me, I never really liked the AUM model. I think as you're going through these programs, you're you're taught to be so sensitive about fees and how much fees can erode from your returns and the benefits of passive management. And, I've always kind of just thought if you charge an assets under management fee, you kind of are guaranteeing that you're going to underperform the market just because it's just so hard to beat the market on a consistent basis. And it was just hard for me to try to sell the assets under management model. I experimented with it a little bit when I started, but if you don't really believe in the model or like the fee schedule that you're pitching to clients, it's going to be really hard to sell it. So I've iterated on a lot of different fee schedules, and now it's more of like a fee for service kind of a model that's based on someone's net worth. So right now we charge $5,000 is our minimum fee for individuals, $7,500 for couples. And with that, it includes their investment management. We don't charge a separate fee for investment management. It includes their financial planning. And we also do tax projections, and we'll do their tax return for them. So with that flat fee, that covers their first $2 million of net worth. And so we're really big on tracking net worth and wanting to see improvements there. If they have net worth over $2 million, it's 0.1%. So essentially, for every $1 million above 2 million, it's another $1,000. So if someone has $3 million of net worth, it's the 7,500 plus the $1,000. So it's pretty reasonable for the amount of complexity, and we use net worth as a kind of a measure of complexity for our clients.
So if you have a minimum fee of $5,000, you're probably not attracting a lot of $100,000 accounts. But what is your average, like new account?
So we don't really think of it in terms of accounts. We think more of like households. In terms of our total assets that we manage, it's about 52 million. Most of that is with Betterment, and that's mostly just taxable accounts and Roth accounts. If clients have pre-tax accounts, we're normally having them consolidate that into their 401ks, assuming that their 401k is good and has low fee funds. So it simplifies their life. And then also it allows us to do backdoor Roths every year for our clients. So we've helped our clients build up really big tax exempt buckets of money for their for tax diversification purposes.
So Shawn, did you always use Betterment, or did you use other custodians at one point, or just let them custody wherever they want?
I experimented a little bit with having them custody wherever they want. I experimented a little. We have a little bit at TD, mostly solo 401ks. I tried using a TAMP for a little while, and just the administrative work that goes along with administering a TAMP and rebalancing and ACATing, and it was just I really wanted to focus on the financial planning and tax minimization and kind of the holistic picture and less on the investment. So we do have some clients that manage some things a little bit on their own at Schwab or Vanguard, but it's hard to kind of make sure that they're following through on the recommendations from the meeting by saying contribute to your IRA, and then we can't really see if they do that or not. So we've experimented a little bit. Most of our clients they like that we will help them set up their accounts at Betterment and manage it there. So most of them do move things over just so that we can kind of help implement the recommendations.
Interesting. Okay. So and you're more and more moving toward Betterment then over time, because it just suits your strategy better.
Yeah. It is so easy. It is so easy with Betterment. Like one client, we in the meeting, we needed to fund her Roth IRA, and we set up the account and had it funded within 5 minutes. No paperwork, just boom, boom, boom. Like we did a screen share. It was really easy. We have about 50 million is at Betterment, and only about like 2 million is at TD. I would say if I would be looking for improvements, it would be maybe if Betterment or another provider could do direct indexing, for a little bit more tax efficiency and tax loss harvesting opportunities. And Betterment's not perfect. Like there's growing pains with them, but for us, it works really well.
Yeah. Have you looked at any others too recently?
Not recently.
Okay. So you've got a strategy down. Good. And so the whole idea in your practice really is planning and then all the tax complexity and all that financial math and other really detailed analysis that a CFP would do, as compared to trying to beat markets and get in, get out, buy commodities, do all kinds of other things. You're really much more focused on the overall planning, and the investments kind of take care of themselves to some extent.
Yeah, I would say we also have a deep specialty in equity compensation. So a lot, like an ideal client for us would have like ISOs, and they're looking to diversify without generating AMT, and how do we calculate the crossover and divest over time. And so we do some pretty complex calculations and multi-year projections and things like that. And then we also do have a component of financial life planning. So we have a values exercise that we do with our clients to understand what their core values are. And then we have a goal setting exercise that we do with them. And kind of like the investments is kind of like the last piece of what's important to you, what are your goals, and then how do we fund those buckets.
Very interesting. So you say financial life planning. Let's talk a little bit more about that. It's a different story than we hear from many of the financial advisors out there. And it sounds like you're kind of on a leading edge to some extent. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then if you think that's where our industry is going, or maybe should go.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's the direction the industry is going. Yeah, so I've done some trainings with like Money Quotient is one of the training programs to help you learn the skills to become a financial life planner, like the kind of questions to ask, how to facilitate those discussions without crossing over into like therapy or trying to be a psychiatrist. Kinder, I did a 3-day training with the Kinder Institute as well. And then so we blend a lot of those tools together. And then I also use a values card deck with our clients, Think to Perform. It's like a deck of like 50 different values. And then clients whittle it down to their top 5, and we have a discussion about it. So things like security, adventure, family, meaningful work often come up. And so we help give them space to discuss what that means to them. And so then once we know what's important to them, then we can help them organize their financial life around that.
You mentioned that your average client family is about 40 years old, right? The leader of so that's actually less than average in our industry, younger than average, right? So is it your sense that these new concepts of money quotient and discussion where there's more of a thought process to it, rather than just trying to beat markets, is something that's more receptive to a younger crowd?
I think I think if you put out there what you're all about, you'll attract that demographic. And so for us, we clearly state on our website, like, we're not trying to beat the market, but we do want market returns. And so we get a lot of clients that I would say there's like that spectrum of do-it-yourselfers, and then there's the delegators that we typically serve as financial planners. But in the middle, there's like a big bucket of like validators that they're like smart. They can do a lot of this research on their own, but maybe they don't have the time or the confidence. And so they kind of like a lot of our clients are kind of like the do-it-yourselfers or validators that they might come to us with like Vanguard portfolios that they've never touched, and so like we align on the investment philosophy. I don't think that like our clients really seek us out for the financial life planning, if I'm being honest. But I think the way that we craft it and integrate it into the planning makes a lot of sense to them. And during the discovery meetings that we have, they buy in and really appreciate it throughout the client experience.
So there's a fair amount of education too that goes into this process, isn't there? Because you're trying to inform them and discuss more than the typical financial advisor might. They may say, "Oh, open an IRA and max out in your 401k and call me when you're 50." So it sounds like you've got a much more holistic view of how to work with an individual in their 20s and 30s and beyond.
Yeah, that's right. And so we help them with their cash flow planning, creating a spending plan and like a 12-month cash flow kind of projection of what their next year looks like in terms of bonuses and stock vesting and things like that. So yeah, we primarily focus, like our three pillars are financial life planning, aligning people's values with their money, um, pro proactive tax planning, like trying to minimize their taxes to the extent possible. And then the third is the cash flow planning, so helping people turn their income into wealth. And so with that is kind of setting some financial healthy habits, like contributing to your 401k. Um, and I think another thing about our model is it's a annual flat retainer, but we break it up into monthly installments. And so even if someone doesn't have a big portfolio, they're able to pay for it out of cash flow.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting as you describe all this because, we interview a lot of different financial advisors for the workshop and then also financial advisors that might join Four Star. And recently interviewed an advisor who expressed the great disincentives that the big national brokerage firms offer to the advisor to keep them. It ends up keeping them from working with younger people because they just don't have as much money. And they don't focus on the planning and the overall net worth and the goal and the development of a financial life, which is what you're doing a lot of, which is really exciting stuff. And any good financial advisor that's thinking long term, it's good for the family to do this kind of training. All the 20 and 30-year-olds, even if you're working with the 50-year-old parents and the 75-year-old grandparents, it's good for the younger folks to learn a lot as well, but they often get neglected. So it sounds like your strategy really is good for that. And it's holistic and good for the whole industry. So congratulations, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're trying to serve a wider audience than the typical industry is served. But even at the price points where I'm, mentioning our minimums, we need to have like a little bit of focus for our core demographics right now, just to have a sustainable business with the team that I have in place. But eventually, I'd love to get those price points a lot further down. There's a couple of really cool firms that I admire, like Commas is one of them, and Facet Wealth, where you can pay $100 a month, $150 a month, and have a dedicated financial planner. And then they'll also manage your assets for you, and they do separate fees. They do charge for assets that they manage. So I'd love to kind of work on that as like maybe my next venture once we kind of get to a certain size with Ballast Point.
So you're innovative, but you're not done innovating, apparently.
No, yeah, I'm always thinking of new ideas.
That's great. Have you tried some of these? I would call your strategies more holistic in planning and educational. Have you tried some of these strategies with older families? A 75-year-old, 80-year-old wealthy investor who's had a Merrill Lynch guy forever.
We have had a few like pre-retirees and retirees. I've had a hard time kind of just relating to them on like a personal level and getting them to take my advice. What has been a challenge. So I'm 40, and so like our average client is 40, and you typically work with people that you can kind of relate to. We do have some clients that are kind of in their 50s, and they're like, the feedback I've gotten from them is like, oh, this is great. We're talking about feelings and values and money, and they've appreciated it. But our core kind of client is more in that 30 to 40-year-old range.
Well, they always say that the younger set nowadays is a little bit more thoughtful about everything. They're more concerned with the environment. They're more concerned with the whole ecosystem of life, rather than maybe our parents and grandparents' generation. So that's interesting you say that. I could see that maybe the older set is more used to a Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley crowd or something like that. So it's interesting. They do say that you get what you expect. and you really have gotten what you've expected, which is really interesting. So really a great discussion. Now, we also talked a little bit about how the financial industry is not terribly diverse. And we have a lot of folks who have grown up in wealthy families. Many minority communities have not been included as much. And naturally, they haven't had as much net worth. But that's changing. We have a growing African American middle class, Hispanic middle class, and successful executives as well in both communities, and in addition to Asians and others. You mentioned some programs that you guys are focusing on to bring interns into your firm and help that diversity issue in our industry.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, during the Black Lives Matter movement and in the wake of George Floyd's murder, there was just so much going on in the country, and I wanted to do something to help bring more opportunities and diversity into our profession. So me and 3 other co-founders, we all run fee-only financial planning firms. We got together and we're like, what could we do to help bring more diversity into our profession? And kind of the key stat that jumped out at me was Black and Latinx planners only represent about 4% of certified financial planners, but they represent about 31% of our country. So there's just like a huge lack of representation there. And kind of like my practice, I think people want to work with people that are like them, similar backgrounds, look like them, and can relate to. And when I learned about that stat, the other stat that jumped out at me was that 4% of financial planners that are Black and Latinx, that kind of matches the wealth distribution in our country. So it's very constant. It's like almost to the same percentage point. It's the wealth is primarily controlled by white people. So to help do something that is actionable, is we created an internship program. Based on my history, I know how hard it is to get into this profession. I had probably 4 internships before I got my first job. It's just so hard to get that first job. And the other thing we learned, so we wanted to create an internship program where people could get that first job. So what we did was we reached out to other firm owners that we knew and said, hey, we would love to roll out a program where you could get an intern that identifies as Black or Latinx. Would you be interested in hiring them? And over the first year, what we found was I thought people would want to participate in this program just because it was the right thing to do. But what we found was people were really treating it as like a kind of like a talent pipeline. And so the problem that we're really solving is we're helping people get that first job. And then also firms have told us that there's a lack of talent in the industry, that they don't know where to look for diverse talent. So what we do is we interview all the interns, we interview all the firms, and for each position that we're filling, we provide 3 intern candidates to each firm. So it really is essentially like a job placement agency where we're matching interns with job opportunities.
Nice. Well, and we talked earlier about, I can't tell you how many conferences I've been to where they had a big session in the ballroom about DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion. And you see a lot of people nodding their heads, and they all feel pretty happy with themselves as they leave the ballroom. But yet I don't see a lot of them doing anything about it. So you're actually doing something about it. And my view of this has always been, we can talk about it, that's great, but maybe we should actually live that idea. In the 60s, when I was raised, we talked about diversity, and now we should actually probably live it. And instead of talking about it all the time, maybe we should live it too. And I think that's what you're doing, Shawn. That's really, it's very admirable. It will change. It's not going to change overnight, but it will change through the actions of folks like yourself. So thanks for what you're doing there as well. That's a great idea.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so far we've had over 200 interns apply for our program, and this is our second summer of placing interns. And we've worked with 72 different firms. We'll be placing about 75 candidates total, like aggregate over these first couple of years. The internship is paid, which is great because many people can't afford to take an unpaid internship. So it's an 8-week internship, at least 15 hours a week. There's going to be trainings throughout the summer from industry leaders. And there's going to be scholarship opportunities. So the interns get access to like the NAPFA conference. Last year, they got there was a scholarship exclusive to the BLX interns where they could get opportunity to go to that conference. So it's been really rewarding. There's definitely like this is like one small thing that we can do, and it's not a huge ask for the hosting firms because it's just an internship, which could essentially function as an extended job interview. And one cool thing that we found after that first summer was 52% of the interns got hired for ongoing work at those firms. So they're finding that there's a good match there, that the candidates have the capabilities, and so we just got to get more of these introductions happening.
Well, and the history of immigration and integration of different groups into American society, everyone can come here. And there were times when there was warring among the whites, and now there's warring among the races and all that. But hopefully by measures like that and integrating people into it, things change over time. And it's really neat. Who pays for it? The companies actually pay the salary small per hour, or is it a
the companies, we want them to have some skin in the game too. And our profession is very lucrative. There's money, there's a lot of money in the profession, and like we want the so we want the firms to have a little skin in the game to pay their interns. They're also, the firms pay the BLX program to participate. So the firms will fill out an application and then they'll make a payment. And it depends on the size of the firm. It's between like $1,000 to $10,000 because some firms want as many as 5 interns. So it essentially is like, if you're going to try and pay a recruiter, there's kind of like the recruiter fee. And that fee mostly goes to Advisor Business Solutions. We're partnering with them. And they're the ones that are kind of doing the matching process for us and they actually do like a lot of coaching, mock interviews, reviewing people's resumes, and that one-on-one feedback as a young professional is so valuable because you don't really get that very often. So we're really setting these interns up for success. Nice.
So Business Advisor Solutions, that's the name of the group?
Advisor Business Solutions.
The other way. Okay, Advisor Business. So are they another RIA firm as well, or are they just a matching firm?
They do a lot of services for the financial planning profession. Helping fill talent needs is one of them. I would say they're more of like kind of like a consulting firm for the financial planning profession.
Okay, interesting. Very good. Well, good. Well, this has been a really interesting discussion. If you could think of a couple of ideas of where you think our industry might be going from your experiences, which appear to be very different than many of the top producing folks that might appear in this financial advisor workshop. Where do you see the industry going?
I think that we'll be going to more of a fee-for-service model, where it's like a flat retainer or something like that. The AUM model, I mean, it does align incentives pretty well because I don't think the AUM model is going to be going away, but I do think that there's going to be a desire for more fee-for-service relationships. I think tax planning is going to be a lot more important. I think there's going to be a decrease of the importance on investment management. I do think like financial life planning is going to be a bigger component in the future. I think those would be kind of my predictions for where things are going to be going.
Interesting. So since we're talking to the financial advisor community and a couple thousand financial advisors, we're pretty sure we'll see this interview. Hopefully they go all the way to the end. If they do go all the way to the end and they're with us right now, what would you like to tell the financial advisor community today on the 4-Star Financial Advisors Workshop. Is there any message to the world?
Right. Like I think some of the things that drives me is helping get people started in the industry. I think people have all, if we think about like our own histories, like somebody has taken a chance on each and every one of us. So I kind of view it as like our duty to kind of pay it forward by help people get started. So I would encourage people to, kind of help the next generation. I think another thing would be, oh man, I just lost my train of thought for the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can like edit this.
Sure.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think the other thing that I would encourage advisors, and just, I don't know, maybe you're already thinking about it this way, but I never got to meet him, but Dick Wagner was someone that I've heard a lot about. And he said, like, kind of the one way to help move the profession forward is just doing one good financial plan at a time, and kind of just slowly, surely, kind of building the reputation of the profession and industry. So encouraging just everyone to keep doing the good work and the hard work and showing up every day and helping improve the lives of people by helping them with their money.
It sounds great. It's almost as if it takes a village of financial advisors working one family at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Well, this has been really a pleasure, Shawn, to have you with us today in the Financial Advisor Workshop, and we'll hope to at some point check in with you again. And we will be back with another fabulous financial advisor on the workshop here in the near term. But in the meantime, thank you again, Shawn, for being with us. And thanks everybody else for hearing us out today on the Financial Advisors Workshop.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Take care.